I'm so happy you're here with me today. Today, I thought I will talk about a subject that is really, really dear to my heart, and a subject that I'm passionate about, and a subject that I feel that each Christian should have in his life. And that subject is obedience and faithfulness towards God. Pretty much when we moved to Alba Julia, which was almost 12 years ago, a friend of ours from England came to our church and he had the message. I don't remember exactly what he talked about, but he did impacted me with something, and it stuck with me since then. He was telling about how once he was in this situation and somebody had died. He was at a funeral, I think, or just at a chapel service for the person that died, like in the evening. But while he was there, he felt God telling him, go and pray for the dead man to rise to life. And he was like fighting with God. He's telling us all his discussions inside of him with God. How can I go? What the family would say. But what if it doesn't happen? Because that's our fear most of the time, right? What if it doesn't happen? What if I do this and the person rejects me? What if I do this and I go bankrupt? What if I do this and everything fails? So he had the same discussions with God. But after, a few discussions and a few fights with God in his heart, he decided to be obedient. So he went and talked to the family. He asked for the permission, of course. He went and prayed for the dead man to rise to life. And he prayed once, nothing happened. The person who died remained dead. He prayed a second time. Guess what? Nothing happened. Prayed a third time, and still nothing happened. So he gave up, and obviously the funeral took place. And after that, he was talking to God and he was like, why did you ask me if you didn't do the miracle? And God answered him, and God told him that it was a test to see if he's going to be obedient to God, even if the miracle doesn't happen. And since then, I kind of took it as a life principle and as a motto for my life. Obedience is my side. The result is God's side. And I kind of took it every time God challenged me to do something. I always remembered this, and I was like, okay, God, in spite of the result, I'm going to be obedient and I'm going to do what you ask me to do. Yeah, I might go bankrupt. Yes. I might fail completely. Yes. I might embarrass myself. All of that are possibilities, big possibilities, and sometimes it did happen. But I knew that what God asked for me is faithfulness and is obedience, and the result is his problem, and that's his part of the work. And I just want to mention a few people from the Bible that God really spoke to me through. And one of these men is Ananias. And normally when we think about Ananias, I think is in English, we normally think of Ananias and Sapphira, right? When they lied to God. But really the Ananias I'm talking about is the one from Acts, the Acts of the Apostle. And he had a big role, small but important role, let's say not big role, but a small role, but very important role in really even in our conversion and us being able to become Christians and being able to enter a relationship with God. We don't hear much about him, and there's just a few Bible verses that talk about him, but we do know that he was a faithful man. We know that he was a godly man. We know that he had a close relationship with God, because otherwise he wouldn't have heard God and God wouldn't have trusted him with this task. But basically one day God told him, Ananias, it's time for you to get up, go into this house, talk to Saul, the one that is killing Christians, the one that is persecuting the church, and go and tell him about me. And obviously if you read the story, you know that Ananias obeyed God, and we know the results and Paul's conversion and all the people that he brought to Christ. So we see a man from the Bible that listened to God and that proved faithfulness and obedience to God, even though he didn't know how things would turn out. Another guy from the Bible that God has spoke to me through him a lot to me in the past few years is Joseph. And we know that Joseph received a big dream from God, and how his life turned around from the favorite son to being sold into slavery in Egypt, from Potiphar's house, how he ended up being wrongly accused and being put into prison, and he stayed for a few years, not just a few days, not just a few months, but he spent a few years being wrongly convicted. But still, he was faithful, and he remained faithful and in obedience to God. And we know how God used all this uh, bad situation in actually preparing him to fulfill the dream that he had for him and the purpose that he had for him. And then lastly, another man from the Bible that I want to mention today is Saul, King Saul. He started really well in his journey with God. And if you read his story, he was very humble and kind of having the right attitude and perspective when he was chosen by God. Actually, at first he was like, oh, he was shy and he was like hiding behind some boxes when Samuel said, he's the man that God chose as a king for you. But we see how slowly in his heart, just he kind of deviated. And we obviously know his sad and tragic end, and how the most tragic part of us, I find it, is when Samuel tells Saul that God left him. And Saul kind of obviously cries and cries in front of Samuel, but we don't see a true repentance from him. Like, to me, that's one of the saddest verses in the Bible with the saddest outcome, because really Saul never really turned back to God in a sincere heart. And this is a warning that I take it for my life, and I want to give it to you and make you responsible with this, is never ever let the faithfulness to God be replaced by faithfulness towards the vision and the dream God gave. Because it's such, many times it seems like it's one and the same things, but we see people from the Bible like Saul, the King Saul, like many other people that kind of started being faithful to God, but because God gave them such a big dream, such a big vision, such a big calling, slowly, the faithfulness towards God was replaced by faithfulness towards the dream or the vision that God gave him. And one of these men that kind of replaced it slowly was King David. And I love the Old Testament. I love all the stories of people. And I love it that God chose to put in the Bible even the failures of godly people. And David is one of these people who kind of was faithful to God, but then at one point, I think he thought he was enough in himself. And he was like, I'm the king, I know what I'm doing, I know what God's dream is for me, I know what's God's vision for me, I've got it under control. And when he took matters into his own hands, we know what happened. At that moment, in his, when he failed and when he sinned with Bathsheba and then killed her husband, King David chose to be faithful to God's dream, for him to be king and for from his line the Messiah to come, instead of remaining faithful to God. When you're faithful to God, just like Joseph was, we go back to Joseph, God's dream will always come true. Maybe not in the way we think it's going to come true, maybe not through the same path that we think is going to come, but if you remain faithful to God, God will take care of the dream that he has for you. So yeah, just that's the message for today. Basically, is always remember our part is to be faithful and in obedience towards God and only God, and the result and how he's going to fulfill the vision and how he's going to fulfill the dream, or if the miracle is going to happen, it's not going to happen, that part of the problem or of the equation, that's God. And then always remember and always be careful, when I'm saying that to myself as well, especially in a time where we see so many leaders and so many like famous Christian people that are failing and are falling from their faith, people with big dreams, people with big callings, but when you replace the faithfulness towards God with the faithfulness towards God's dream, things are going to go down rapidly. So always remember and keep it as an alarm bell if you want in your heart. Never ever replace faithfulness towards God with faithfulness towards His dream. So be blessed, be encouraged, be ready to go and do great things for God. Don't be scared to walk in obedience towards God. The result is never and was never your responsibility. That's God's responsibility. So I'm looking forward to hear all the great things God is doing in you and through you and for you. Be blessed. See you next time. Don't forget to subscribe and like. And thank you for staying until the end. Bye-bye.